Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this free motion quilting project video on Express Your Love, this beautiful goddess quilt that we are stitching through together. And last video we learned micro zippling, which is zippling on a very small scale, and our focus really was using red brick isocord thread over this black hull cloth and the effect that that would give. And if you had a chance to stitch it out, basically that's going to give a very recessive effect. It's going to kind of recede into the background. It's going to be a really nice background fill. It's not going to draw a lot of attention to itself. And when I was writing the blog post for that video, the kind of term that came to mind was intensity. The thread intensity that we're getting into with these designs. And so for micro zippling, that particular design was really less intense. Didn't have a lot of travel stitching, actually didn't have any travel stitching involved, so that thread's really not going to stand up and shout at you from the surface of the quilt. And really it depends on the design more than the thread color. So today we're going to take this exact same thread color, brick isocord thread, and we're going to stitch it through with another design, and it's going to be on the opposite side of that intensity spectrum. It's going to be a very intense design, a lot of travel stitching, and it is going to stand up and shout on the surface of this quilt. So let's get started. To quilt this design, we are going to be working with boomerangs, and basically here's the steps to this design. We're going to stitch basically a little almost triangle shape. Just come up, come to a point, and stitch back down. And you're wanting to form kind of a general triangle kind of shape, just like that. Okay, once you get it to where the lines are about 1/2 inch long on both sides, then you're going to start working off another side of it. So right here, I'm going to go work a couple of those that way, and then I'm going to work a couple of these this way. So it's basically kind of a bounce pivot. So you're going to pivot, bounce, backing and forth. And this is a very angular, straight line, sharp angle design. And I'm just going to flow with it and create some rows. Technically the design is not difficult. It's the travel stitching that might hang you up a little bit if your machine isn't, or your thread isn't liking the travel stitching. So you can see how I just kind of bend that shape in any direction I want to go. I stitch them until they're a little long, and as soon as they start to go out of control, I change direction and stitch off of another side. And really this design is very forgiving. If you accidentally stitch something kind of weird, like here I'm going to create kind of an arch shape rather than a triangle shape, and you can just hide that within triangles. And that's just fine. It's a very forgiving design because there is so much thread play involved. And so I'm just bouncing back and forth. It's a very small movement, very controlled. And notice how I change directions at any point that I want. So I'm going to build it up this way. I'm right here. Now I'm going to build it up working off of that edge. I could just as easily have stitched down and worked off this edge to the back. That would have been fine too. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Stitch a little bit more of this, and you can already start to see just how different this boomerangs design is from the micro zippling. The build up, how many times I'm stitching back over my stitches, how many times I'm intentionally travel stitching, is really going to have a very different effect on the surface of the quilt. Anytime that you have a little gap between the outline, just go ahead and go in there and fill it in. The more travel stitching you do, the better this design's going to look. Really no wrong way to do it. The only thing to keep in mind is just keep your straight line straight and your pointy triangle in nice and sharp. Like right there, I kind of curve that around, no big deal. Come over here and I'll sharpen it up with this one. You can get a really nice flow going with this design. And here is an area that I've already filled, and I'm going to back up my camera so you can see just a little bit more. And you can see the beautiful effect that this can have on the surface of your quilt. This area is zippling, this area is boomerangs, and it's the exact same thread color. Look how dynamic and bright and intense this looks, it's because of all that travel stitching involved with the filler design. This is very flat, very matte. A lot more of that black fabric is showing through because there's no travel stitching involved in the zippeling. So I hope that has helped you see just how amazing designs can be. Even in the exact same thread color, you can take two totally different designs, put them in a quilt, and come up with a really neat effect based on the intensity of the design. Now you might be wondering, how do you know what thread color is going to work? How do you know what design is going to work? Well, the best possible thing that you can do is test it. Create a little 4 or 6 inch block, stitch out the designs that you're thinking of using in your quilt, pin it to the wall and step back 10 feet. Even for a bed quilt, you'll want to step back 10 feet because even if a quilt's on your bed, even if it's not a wall hanging, you're still going to mostly be looking at that quilt when you're 10 feet away from it, not when you're right smack up on top of it. When you're enjoying and appreciating the look of the quilt, the appearance of it on your bed, you're going to be standing away from it. You're going to be admiring it. So make sure that whatever designs you want to use, you make a little sample, stitch it on the scale you plan to use it in, stitch it with the thread color you plan to use it in, and stitch it on top of the fabric that's in your quilt. You have some scraps, use them up. Make that little sample, pin it to the wall, and double check that it's going to have the effect that you want it to have. That is really the only way to know what's going to happen. You know, I knew that these two designs were going to be wildly different, have a very marked difference in intensity. If I wasn't so sure, I would have stitched out a sample first just to make sure. So it's one of those things to play with, have lots of fun with, and enjoy experimenting with both boomerangs and micro zippling in your quilts. So my name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Free Motion Quilting Project. Find more videos, hundreds of them actually, at freemotionproject.com and stitch along with us through 2013 working on the Express Your Love quilt. Find all of that and more at freemotionproject.com. Till next time, let's go quilt.